Welcome to Sleuth TV Live. Do you have a challenge to do more with less? In these crazy economic times, are you finding that your team dynamic has changed, that the expectations are changed, pressure is being increased, and you are asked to do more with what you have? Well, if so, then you came to the right place. Welcome to Sleuth TV Live. I am your host, Don Brown. Let's see. So Sleuth TV is a monthly program where we talk about improving your engineering efficiency. Sleuth itself is a web app that helps you improve your engineering efficiency by measuring and improving your DORA metrics. This show is talking about what's new in Sleuthland, what tips and tricks we picked up along the way, because really at the end of the day, we are kind of all in this together, trying to find ways to be more efficient, to survive, to rise above, all that kind of stuff. This is the place to have that discussion. So I'm happy that you are here. Welcome, Tracy, because that was what I was going to talk about next. Sleuth TV Live is an interactive experience. YouTube is great for videos and learning things, tutorials. This is more for a discussion. So if you are watching live, please be like Tracy and join the chat. Feel free to ask a question, make a comment, an observation, perhaps. Even tell us where you're calling from. That is also fun. Either way, point is make it interactive. However, if you're watching it after the fact, two things. One, down below, you'll notice that there will be chapters, so you're welcome to jump to the part of the video that is more interesting to you. Maybe it's a particular tip or a trick that you were interested in. Maybe it's a feature you wanted to see talked about. That's how to jump to those spots. I mean, you're welcome to watch the whole thing. My feelings will not be hurt either way. You can also comment. So this is also another way to interact. Let us know if you saw something that you liked, something that you wish was there, something that you were unclear about. That's what that is for. So please interact. We're here, we're going here to talk about doing more with less. So this topic comes up as, you know, honestly, there's just a lot of chaos right now. There's a lot of layoffs. There's a lot of changes in companies going under, unfortunately, companies doing well. There is a website. When I was doing the research, it was really interesting. There's a website called layoffs.fyi, which just details all the layoffs. And it is just so many a day. It reminds me back in the days of the .com era where we had a website called F Company, something like that. Anyways, it just listed all the little stories of companies going under. So it's not that, thankfully. We're not talking that. It's just layoffs. Usually what happened is people went really big in post-pandemic and then realized they went too big and had to pull it back. Although they use much fancier words around that sort of thing. But what that means for us as the engineering manager, as the architect, as the senior engineering leader, it means that there's a lot of changes we have to deal with. We still have the same expectations of delivery. In fact, probably even more because of the pressure being put on business and things like that. But then sometimes we have fewer resources. We have fewer people. Maybe in many cases, I've found that it wasn't the devs that were being let go. It was more the support staff. Product managers, for example. When Atlassian laid off a bunch of people, it tended to be a lot of designers, a lot of UX people, a lot of program managers. Well, projects aren't going to lead themselves. And so that can be a lot of pressure because it can take a lot of your senior devs and senior experienced people and make them start having to do project management. Or it's an interesting one. I heard about a layoff yesterday, which is taking all of the management, half the management layer, and is telling them either you're let go or you have to become an IC. And so you have people who haven't been coding in many years now having to become an IC to keep their jobs. It's a crazy time. It's a crazy time. So what we're here is to talk about how we can deal with it. There's some tips and tricks that I wanted to share that we've found useful. This is, well, Sleuth TV Live. So we are going to be talking about the application that my company builds and not just about how you can use it, because it's kind of annoying to have somebody tell you all the things you should do. Instead, I'm going to take a different approach and I'm going to talk about how we use it. So that's what's going to happen. But first, we have our segment, which is looking at the monthly newsletter. And so in the newsletter, for those who don't know, and I recommend that you sign up for it, we send out what's new in Sleuth, the different features, the different fixes, different things that we're interested in. it's a great source to just kind of keep track of what's happening. But if you want to go beyond just the words and get into how it actually works, then that's where Sleuth T Live has your back. So I am going to share screen. Today is going to be a solo effort. So sometimes I have people on. Last time, I think I had like 4 or 5 people on. It was pretty exciting. This time you just get me, but it's not just me yelling at you, yelling, well, hopefully not yelling. That would be terrible. But we're going to walk through some stuff together and take a look at it. So here is the monthly newsletter. I'll kind of start at the beginning. I'm not going to read it, although I will read the one thing, which is Tyler, who creates these newsletters, always has a great joke at the beginning. Let me see if I can bump the font up to make that a little bit easier to read. How does a sysadmin keep a fire going? They rotate the logs. How cute. Although I don't even know if logs are rotated in quite the same way anymore. They tend to be sent by a UDP or TCP over to an aggregation server. Anyways, still a good joke. So we have a couple things that have happened this week, and there is some nice marketing verbiage to talk to you about it, but I want to show you. I'm a firm believer that showing is better than telling. So the first thing is issue breakdown. So to show this off, I'm actually going to switch over to our live instance. So what you're looking at here is you're looking at Sleuth using Sleuth. So this is my company actually using our product for things. And actually this is available on the website, by the way. If I go to sleuth.io, you're always welcome to see our live demo where you can see how we're using it. For better or for worse. Sometimes not for the better, which is this time, which is going to be fun. But that's okay, because that's the whole point here is to talk. Oh, that was a CP. The whole point here is to talk about usage, about raw usage, how people are really using something, not just how the marketing sheen is on things. And so what we're looking at here is the DORA metrics for the Sleuth project itself. And what's kind of nice, we're looking at a 2-week period, so March 10 to March 23. This is one of the first things that we added, which is issues breakdown. So now we can see of all the issues that are referenced in all these deployments, what are their status? Now, as you'd expect, most of them are done. There's some that are deployed to production, that's a state. 2 that are in review, which is interesting. I guess you could ship something that's in review and they need to review it, still work on it. So that's kind of interesting. But I think where the issue breakdowns gets more useful is in our work in progress screen. So at a glance, what your work in progress screen is showing you is how your projects that are code that are still in flight, how they're doing. So for example, I can see that we're actually doing better on coding time than our average. We're doing worse on a review lag time. That's the time between the PR is created and the first review is submitted. So it looks like the work that we have right now is taking longer to get someone to review, which is interesting. Review time is still pretty high, but not too crazy. If you want to go deeper and understand what exactly is your work in progress, that's where the issue breakdown. So I can see that of the things that are in progress, I have, of the ones that have issues related to them, 3 of them are in review, 2 are in progress, and 1 is still investigating. So depending on your situation, some companies use Jira or an issue tracker a lot with a lot of different states and a more complicated workflow. This will be quite useful. If you just have kind of an open and a closed, maybe not so much. But the idea is we want to give you more visibility into what's happening, not only in what has already happened, but what's currently happening. So that's one thing we're excited about. Oh, this one's interesting, and I'm kind of surprised this one didn't get a tick. So environment drift. Let me go back to Sleuth over here. So Sleuth has its origins in being a deployment tracker. So it's tracking what ships to production in your different environments. And that's kind of interesting, right? It's not just what ships, but also in the environment. So you can see over here that Sleuth is tracking for us, it's tracking production and staging. Some companies have a QA environment or another pre-prod, or they might put different regions in here. In our particular case, what we do is we ship it to staging, and then once it's happy on staging for a certain amount of time, it's automatically promoted to production. But if for whatever reason that link breaks, then staging can start to get quite far ahead of production. So Sleuth had a way to show you this. If you go over to your code deployment page, you'll see this thing on the left which says environment drift, production to staging. Now in this particular case, there is no changes. everything that's on staging is in production, and that's generally how we like it. But what would happen before, and actually I realize now, I'm not going to be able to demo this feature very well, but I guess you're seeing what we see. So there's that. Because what would happen is if staging got too far ahead of production, before we would say, hey, you're one deploy ahead. And that was it. So we would tell you that you're lagging production, but we would never tell you what is lagging production, what is the changes in between. So now when there is a change, you'll be able to click here. There'll be a summary, of course, be able to click here and then see actually all the different deploys, all the commits that are in one environment and not in another. So for example, let's say that you're deploying to your dev environment, you're staging every night, but you only deploy to prod once a week or once a month. This helps you understand that when you deploy to prod, here are all the changes that are going to be involved. Or maybe your QA environment is different than your staging environment, and you want to know if I promote QA to staging, what's going to happen. It'll list all the different things. So hopefully that's a tool for you. Again, if you're a team that merges a pull request and ships it straight to production, it's not going to be that useful, except to let you know when things are not working. But if you're a team that does have different lags between the different environments, then this might be a useful tool for you. In our case, we do try to keep it the same. Although we've done a lot of work recently, we're switching from Redis to RabbitMQ as a message store, and we did hit a lot of challenges on keeping things in sync and having deployments that were starting to fail. So actually that turned out to be kind of a useful thing for us in the last couple of weeks. Let's see, detecting builds that match the environment. I think this is really, this one is really for the Sleuth folks out there. So if you're already using Sleuth, this one's for you. If you go to a mapping of, and actually, you know what? I'm trying to think of how I would set it up. So right now we map our deployments through a webhook. So I can't demo this feature because you have to use build detection. But I guess my point is, before, if you have your builds triggered from your master or main branch, some of you do that, but some of you trigger builds from a tag event or something. And so Sleuth was able to detect one and not the other, or both, or something. You can now make that configurable. That's pretty much the extent of that one. As I said, I'd love to demo it for you, but we don't use build mapping for our main project. So that kind of, oh, actually, you know what? I take that back. We do use build mapping in a different project. So on our clients, we have this one. I think this one uses build mapping. Let's see what happens. It does. It does. So I can show you. So this is our Sleuth client. So this is a client library that we deploy, and we only release this pretty infrequently. But what you can do now is that you can actually, well, you can do a couple things. One is, oh, sorry, it's not available for this one. It's only for Circle and a few others. So never mind. Just trust me that if you're having difficulty figuring out how to map a build to when you do a release, and you don't want to send Sleuth a webhook, we got your back. We have a solution now. Feel free to contact support if it's not clear. So those are just a couple things. This is actually the content that we're doing right now. So you're in the right place if you are interested in that. And then we have some new articles that have been going up. And oh, this one I really like. If you haven't already, let's see. If you haven't already, on our YouTube channel, and we actually have this on the main website as well. If you go to the main website, you will see a thing where we call, where is it? I think it's under resources. Yeah, the library and TV. We kind of call out some of these. There's been a couple really interesting ones that I like lately. Last time, if you missed the Sleuth TV Live last time, I had 4 different people on talking about how they use DORA metrics and how it's useful for them. What's kind of cool is that we were able to take that and turn it into, what is that, a 5-minute video? So you don't have to watch the whole hour to get the value. You can get 5 minutes and get something out of it. So that was pretty cool. I really like that one, as well as some customer interviews that had a lot of useful information. So again, if you're wanting to know about how people, other than the people that are trying to sell you the tool, use the tool and use DORA metrics just in general, then there might be some good resources there. And that is the month in Sleuth. So there's more things we could talk about, but I want to get to our main event. But before we get to our main event, I do have something that I was working hard on last night to get ready for you all in this show. So without further ado, let's roll it. Tech layoffs keep coming. The back to the office push accelerates, and Curl turns 25 years young. Amazon is laying off 9,000 more workers after an earlier layoff of 18,000. The layoffs affected areas including Amazon Web Services and my pandemic hobby, Twitch. Oh, and we're just getting started. This one I do want to talk about though, Atlassian. I worked at Atlassian for over 12 years, most notably during the 2008 global financial crisis. The founders famously decided to buck trends and actually increase hiring. When the crisis was over, they were stronger than ever before. Unfortunately, they took a different path this time. Atlassian laid off 5% of staff, or 500 people. Like other companies, Atlassian blamed overhiring during the pandemic, streamlining, and global economic conditions. Not all layoffs are explicit. The back to the office push is seen by many as a way to sneakily lay off a good percent of its workforce. Recent remote employees hired after the pandemic are particularly affected. The programmatic engineer reports insider information about Amazon doubling down on its in-office work. More than 30,000 employees petitioned the company to reconsider a requirement to be back in the office. Management responded with a list of 28 question and answers that affirmed the much maligned policy. One such question asked, "If I now live far away from my office, do I really need to come back 3 days a week?" The answer,
"Yes, we expect everyone to return to the office. If you cannot do so, please discuss with your manager options like allowing extra time to relocate."
Extra time to uproot a family and move to a big city? How thoughtful. On a happier note, this month is the 25-year anniversary of Curl, the popular command line tool. It was started by Daniel Steinberg as a personal project that scratched an itch. The tool grew to a developer staple with a conservative 10 billion downloads. What's next for Daniel and Curl? Well, Daniel admits that he was never good at predictions. He hopes to continue working on Curl, quote, "as long as it is fun and people want to use the results of my work." Doing more with less? Indeed. That's it for the news. Stay classy, cyberspace. And we're back. So there you go. That's the news. As I said, lots of layoffs. Crazy, crazy time. But that's okay. That's what we are here. We're here to talk about how to do more with less, how to take this as an opportunity to improve, to have happier developers, happier staff, happier customers, because that's what we're all about. The production quality was nice. Thanks, Tracy. I had some, again, technical issues, but we made it. My favorite is I got these two light. Oh, anyway, sorry. I could talk tech stuff all day long, but yeah, it was fun to create. And thanks also to Katie, who helped me write the script for that. That was very helpful, because the research is always kind of something that kind of takes a lot of time. Let's get to it. Let's talk about how to do more with less. Now, again, I don't want to just preach at you and say, here's all the things that you should do, and because I want you to buy my tool. Instead, let's talk developer to developer, manager to manager. Let's talk about how some tips that we've picked up along the way. My team has, I have personally, and I'll talk about how they work, why they work, what they're good, what they're not good for, and see if maybe that's interesting. Maybe some of that has some relevance and could apply to you and your situation. So let's get it started with our first one. The DORA metrics give us a pulse. So when you're talking about a DORA metrics, come on, baby. Oh, press the right button. When you're talking about your DORA metrics, as a manager, one thing that can happen as you have layoffs, as you have team changes, and this is not just a negative thing. This also could happen if you're growing a lot. If you're doubling your team, tripling your team, or maybe bringing on team from a new area or new backgrounds or things like that, maybe even trying the same team, but a different process. One of the concerns you have as you make these kind of changes, you want to make sure you're not changing things. Or if you're changing them, you meant to change them. So how I use Sleuth is, for the DORA metrics specifically, is that pulse of how things are going. So in my particular case, so what we're looking at here is, again, the DORA metrics for my product. When I look at this, 7.6 versus 8.7 deploys a day, I don't really care about the actual number, other than to say that deploys should be happening. What I really care more about is this little thing up here. I'm trying to highlight it without the tooltip, as that goes up and down. What's kind of nice is, and really you should have this with any DORA metrics tool. So this isn't so much a Sleuth specific tip, this is more of a DORA metrics tip, is it can be a really useful way to get that pulse of how things are changing. So I can look at it in the quarter view. So here, did I choose quarter? Did I choose month? 28 days. Let's go to quarter. So I'm manager. I'm thinking about how are things going over time. And I can see that, yeah, this makes sense. Or deployments per day have actually been going up a little bit. And that's kind of expected. We added a few people. They're starting to get up to speed. And so I'm seeing exactly what I want to see here. Interestingly, this other line, feature flags, it looks like we're using feature flags a lot more. That's encouraging because that shows that we're doing interesting stuff that we want to be more cautious about, and that totally matches up. What's happening is two things. One is we're starting to do more experiments, so small changes that we turn on for some customers and not some customers. So that's kind of, I can see that actually visually happening in the metrics. The other thing that's useful is we, as I mentioned, we're rolled out RabbitMQ to replace how we do job production. And that one involved a lot of feature flags. So I can not only get a sense of what's happening in my team, but I can see if things are generally getting better or worse. So this one is particularly interesting, lead time. So here I'm looking at the average time it takes from coding time, first commit, to when code is shipped in production. And so what I want to see is, or what I would expect to see is, as we add new people, the change lead time is high in the beginning because maybe they don't really know the code base very well. So their code requires a lot of review and a lot of comments and a lot of cycles to kind of get it right, which will create a longer change lead time. But what I would expect to see is, as time goes on, that starts to flatten out. And that looks kind of like what's happened here. So as we've gotten these senior developers up and going, they're now able to do things in a quicker manner, get things out quicker with higher quality. Well, that's actually an interesting one. That leads me to the second part, talking about a pulse, the quality. We're not doing so well right now, honestly, from a Sleuth standpoint, as measured by failure rate. So let me talk about this and how we use DORA metrics. And I think I alluded to this before. It's not so much that I care that our failure rate is super accurate and the number matters. It's more that I care about what I'm measuring and I care about how that's changing over time. So, and I'll talk about this in a little bit in one of the other tips, but I want to summarize it by, we track a lot of different measures of failure. This is not, some companies just call failure rate is when you had to do a rollback. And if that was the case, we would be probably 1% failure rate. But instead, in order to get more useful information out of it, again, to help the tool do the work for us, we track all sorts of potential impact sources, such as 500 rates, memory, PagerDuty alerts. We have a job that runs against production every 4 hours. We want to make sure that still works. We have Sentry errors, status page. We have how many jobs are in our queue. So we're looking a lot of different things to figure out lots of different measures of health. So when I see a high failure rate, what that's saying is, it isn't saying that 20% of our deploys failed. It's saying that there was unhealthy bits detected by one of these many different metrics in 20% of our deploys. And that's a great proxy for kind of the quality of how we're doing. And honestly, so for right now, we struggled a bit. The RabbitMQ rollout that we did cause a number of failures, and we did have some incidents based on some customer usage and some things like that. So specifically within the lens of doing more with less, I could have developers watch dashboards all day long, and that's what they do. And you could have a manager, SRE, that's what they do dashboards, raise this stuff. By using a tool to watch all of this stuff automatically for me, it makes my job easier, especially as when I wear the hat of a manager, being able to go in one place and say, hey, it's getting worse, what's going on? And then that causes the team to say, you're right, let's figure that out. and actually start making it. That's kind of level 1. Level 2, which article talked about it really great in one of our videos, is the team themselves are discovering these problems and proactively making the changes. That's where you want to get to. So you want to take away that mean time to detection. You want to take away all that lag that means that unhealthy code is out there longer. You want to get that faster and quicker. And if you can use a tool to do that, then you're doing more with less. So that's how we use DORA metrics in a nutshell. We use it a way to get a pulse of what's happening and not so much care about the numbers. Once you're at the numbers where you like them to be, deploying frequently, have a low change failure rate, things like that, it's more about the changes in the numbers. I do want to know if it gets better or worse and see if that might be correlated to fewer people, newer people, things like that. Let's talk about our next one. Automate deploys. This one is one of my favorite ways that we use Sleuth to do more with less. So let me give you a little bit of background. Generally speaking, when I work on a service, how I like to work is I like that code goes out there, it goes to a staging environment, and then it's tested in some way. And if that's successful, then it goes to production. And even better than that, I like it when the changes go out automatically as much as possible. And it goes single file, meaning that every pull request that gets merged goes to production. It's called continuous delivery. And then as we apply it, once it becomes all automated, it becomes continuous deployment. I love working in continuous deployment workflow, but you need to make sure that you're safe doing that. So I want to show you how we use Sleuth to not only implement continuous deployment, but do it in a safe way that gives me confidence when our code hits production that it is high quality. For this one, we are going to have to, well, let's start over in the land of, oops, wrong one. Let's start over to the land of Circle CI. So we use Circle CI to actually do our deployments. Let's find a deployment that happened here. This one. So this is us changing a secret feature that I might or might not have already leaked and might or may not mention in later part of the show. You can see our deployment process. Roughly, this is how it works. When code is merged to master, we run all of these checks and build an image. Then it automatically goes to staging. Once it's on staging, then it stops. And Circle CI says, do you want to continue to prod, yes or no? So the usual way that people implement this is you have to go into Circle and you have to click that approve button. And then once you click approve, then it goes to production. But there's a couple things that need to happen there. One is you need to know that it went to staging. 2, you need to know that it's healthy on staging. And then 3, someone actually has to click the button to make it go all the way through. We wanted to automate that. And so we used a feature of Sleuth to do that. Let me pull that up real quick. You see that? Yes, I think you can. So what you're looking at is what we call a rules file. Sleuth has this feature. What we call it is Sleuth Actions. With Sleuth Actions, you're able to not only just track your DORA metrics, but you're actually able to automate, to use the events from tracking DORA metrics to automate actions. I need to find a better way to say that, but hopefully you know what I mean. And this is an example of an action. So in this action, when a deployment is deployed to staging, when it does not have a label of quick fix on the pull request, then send a message to a Slack channel. Hey, do you want to deploy this to production? If people click yes, then run this build. So our test and deploy build, auto approve. Remember that was an approval step in Circle CI? It'll automatically go call Circle and approve that build, which is really cool. And then it will send a message to Slack that says, hey, the build was promoted. And then, of course, you can customize this. You can also customize it. We send ours to deploy-staging, and the number of votes is required is 1. You could also restrict this to just the authors of the change. There's different ways you can configure it. But the basic idea is instead of having the developers have to know that the code shipped on staging, have to go over to Circle CI and find the little button and click approve, now we get a message in Slack. So that already is saving some time. And what's interesting about this is you think about this, it's not saving a ton of time in actual time. But what it is it's saving a lot of wall clock time. Because maybe the developer didn't realize that they went to staging and they went off to lunch and then they got distracted in a meeting, came back 4 or 5 hours later. So by automating it, you're cutting out hours, potentially days of work, not actual work, but clock time work, which is going to further optimize your process, because that's what optimization is all about. Efficiency. It's about finding ways to cut out all those parts that aren't doing anything, all the deadwood, all the parts that don't add value, and automating it. But we wanted to take it one step further. So we have this rule called stage to prod auto. Now, when it goes to staging and it is not labeled as a quick fix, because we do have a special process in case we really need to get something out there, and no one has vetoed it. And here are the next two parts of the exciting part. If the health is healthy and it has been deployed for more than 5 minutes, that's really important. So because remember that Sleuth is not only tracking the deployment, but it's tracking the health of that deployment. So what we're doing here is we're saying when it's on staging, Sleuth, please track all these different measures of health. Track them for at least 5 minutes. If it's all still healthy, then automatically approve the build and deploy it. So right there, we have implemented completely automatic deployments from staging to production, but with the confidence knowing that our deployment on staging was healthy. Now, how do you determine health? Again, that's up to you. You can point at Sleuth at different metrics. You can point it at builds. You can point it at PagerDuty. And this has actually saved us in a couple occasions. There was once I was shipping a change that worked fine on my machine. But then once I shipped it to production, or I shipped it to staging rather, it caused so many errors because of the state of data in the database. That's something you often forget about. It works on your machine because you have clean data, and then you go to prod or staging, it doesn't have the same data, and you can cause a bunch of problems. That's exactly what happened. So this tripped the automatic promotion because of all the errors, because we tracked Sentry, and then that made the deployment unhealthy. So this never went. And in fact, and then it sent me a message saying, hey, your deployment to staging was unhealthy. I was able to go and fix it. So not only were no customers affected, but I was able to be notified immediately, which saved us some time. Just to show what that is like, let me give you another little glimpse into the life of a Sleuth person and take you on a little journey. Let's see if this works. Always fun to do stuff live. Anything happen? On. I want to show you our Slack, which is always a tricky thing because I don't want to show you too many things on the Slacks because that could be bad. We want to show you some things on the Slacks. So we're going to do this, and I think it's safe. So let's share what it looks like in Slack for us. And that's close enough. So this is all the notifications that Sleuth sends to Slack. So again, what we want to do is want to find ways to automate. I was trying to find one. Okay, here's one where you did the deploy. So you remember in the Sleuth YAMLs file, we said, send a message. Do you want to deploy to production, approve or reject? This is what it looks like. So a developer can always go into Slack and approve or reject it right there without having to touch Circle, without needing to go into build system, just live in Sleuth. The other thing I just want to show you while we're here is this kind of stuff. So this is Sleuth telling Slack that a build happened. Pretty useful. Which developers, how many PRs, gives you kind of an idea of the change. Where it gets interesting is this part over here, that I think you can still see, which is Sleuth detecting the health of it. And so Sleuth will monitor it for a while, and then once it detects it's healthy, or later it detects it's unhealthy, it'll update the thread of the message in Slack. And this is probably, and I didn't put a point for this, but this is probably one of my favorite uses of Sleuth to just save us time, is to proactively notify the developer who did the change that their change was unhealthy. Because what you're not seeing here is that if it was unhealthy, Sleuth would have also sent a personal Slack message to me to tell me that my code was unhealthy. So right there, my mean time to detection, which is a key component of improving quality, goes to almost 0 because Sleuth detected unhealthiness. It let me know immediately. I'm the one that did the change, so I'm the one that's in the best position to understand the actual issue and to fix the issue. And since I just did the deployment, it's already all still in my head. So your ability to recover from failure when it does happen is so much improved because of automation. So I guess my point here is that if you're using Sleuth, this is a great tool to use. You can use actions for this automation. Even if you just use Sleuth to notify Slack when deployments happen and they go unhealthy, that's already really useful. And if you're using another tool, I would recommend finding some ways. The idea is message people where they live. Developers live on Slack, so message them in Slack. Don't make them go to this tool and that dashboard and that. Find ways to automate all of that, because the more you can keep a developer focused in their IDE, in their chat, and that's it, the more effective they're going to be, the happier you're going to be, and the happier your customers are going to be. So there is our little sneak preview into the world of Sleuth deployments. So just to kind of complete that story is if we go back to our Sleuth, and if you're wanting to know more information about Sleuth actions, if you go to your help button and you click on actions, you will see all the different things you can do. So this describes the YAML format. This gives you all the different variables you're able to create rules based off of, all the different things that can trigger it, and then all the actions, things you can do, such as add a deploy tag, auto approve, notify. You can do a Slack channel message. You can send a webhook. You can transition issues. This one's kind of cool. We use this one where when code is shipped to production, automatically transition any mentioned issues into a new state. That can be kind of useful to help managers who live in their issue tracker to know when things ship and what the state of things are. Because often issue trackers can get out of sync. They're really good for tracking work that's in progress and planned, but then after that, it kind of gets fuzzy. So you can use Sleuth to help automate some of that. Because again, it's not about taking something hard away. It's about taking something that takes a lot of wall clock time and just allows things to get out of sync. And when things get out of sync, you don't trust them. Then you have to spend extra time to investigate, to figure out what's going on. The more you can remove that, then the more time you're going to have. Again, you'll be able to do more with less. Basically, we should have made a drinking game at the beginning of this, which is every time I say do more with less, take a shot. Although, not that I encourage alcohol, and that probably would be so many shots that you'd be comatose. So it was a terrible idea. A shot of water. Hydration is always a good thing. Speaking of hydration, all right, so let's talk about something else that we do here, which is, well, okay, so I referred to this initially, and this I want to dive a bit deeper. In order to do more with less, we have Sleuth track so many ways to measure health, so we don't have to. How many of you out there have a deployment process that says whenever you deploy to this environment or deploy to production, please go to this dashboard and verify that everything's okay? And then my next question is, how many times do you think your coworkers actually do that when they deploy? And how many times do you do it? I have yet to find someone who does that any more than half the time. They're like, oh yes, I should totally measure the health of what I just shipped. And I probably do it about half the time because some of them are really small and they're not risky, and sometimes they are. And then how many times do you think your coworkers? The number is usually even lower. So it's one of those things where if you have a developer supposed to do something, but they don't really want to do it, you're fighting a losing battle. As a manager, you're fighting a losing battle. Find a way to automate it so you don't even need to have that fight. You don't even need to try to convince them. It just happens. So going back to how we use Sleuth for that, let me switch it back over. Well, let me switch it back over. Press the right button this time. As I mentioned, we have a number of different impact sources. So we have a very simple one, which is our 500 error rates on ALB. What this is doing is this is going out to CloudWatch and looking for 500 errors. And when they happen, it's going to run that through an anomaly detection algorithm. That's a Sleuth thing to tell you if that's unhealthy or not. So as you can see here, mostly we're healthy. Every now and then we have one, but not enough to trip our unhealthiness because it's just one. Because you don't want just one bad reading to make a deployment unhealthy. You want it to be a certain number of time. And of course, that's configurable. I'll give you an example of one that's a little bit more populated. Sadly, our errors is probably going to have a bit more data. I click on it. There it goes. So you can see that generally speaking, we have 0, 1 errors, but every now and then we deploy something that causes a bunch of errors. And what you can see here is that Sleuth has detected that and has figured out these are outliers and has probably marked deployments as unhealthy because of this. So those are two that we really like to use. It's always surprising to me how many teams out there don't have any way to know if their code is healthy. They basically depend on customers complaining or something. So I recommend not doing that. If you're using AWS, at a very minimum, plug into CloudWatch metrics, error rates, simple things like that. If you are more advanced, using something like Datadog can be nice, and Sentry is great for tracking errors that happen in your code. Here's an example of one that's a little bit more, well, here's another one you probably could do, which is PagerDuty. So if you're using PagerDuty or OpsGenie or one of those incident management or alerting tools, you can also feed that into Sleuth to know when these different incidences are happening so that that can be tracked as unhealthy period, which then can blame a code deployment, and that's where you get your change failure rate. So teams often have PagerDuty available. This one's an advanced one. I'll kind of close on this one because this is one that I kind of like. And this is also one that causes us all kinds of headache. If you look at our numbers, you'll see that our MTTR number is quite high. We're talking a mean time to recovery of, I think, what are we at, 2 hours, 3 hours, which is terrible. But the reason is because we're tracking this build. This is a build, a smoke test that runs on production every 4 hours. Fortunately, this smoke test can be flaky. That's something that we're fighting with right now because the smoke test is not only testing Sleuth, but it's also testing GitHub and Bitbucket. And as they make changes, our tests break. And so is the actual product broken? No, it is the test. So it's not worrisome from the standpoint of like, oh my God, Sleuth is down, but it is something we want to fix because it is really useful to have that smoke test that's always running. So you can point Sleuth at a build that's running to know. So that's a really useful way. So instead of having to pay somebody to constantly test their application, make sure it's working, we automate that test, and then we use Sleuth to suck in that information so that it can be associated with the build and let us know on Slack when things go unhealthy. You can kind of see how all the different pieces start to come together. Let's do one more real quick, and that is our work in progress. I talked about it before, which is Sleuth not only is tracking your deployments as they're out in your DORA metrics that's already happened, but it's also looking at what work is happening at runtime. So let's take a look at our work in progress. I click the right button. I've already kind of gone through the screen a little bit, but this screen is starting to be used more and more by our teams to help identify issues before they become issues. And that's really the whole point of this. Identify risks before they negatively affect your metrics. The one that we're particularly focusing on right now is review lag time. And as you can see, we're not quite there. We still have a ways to go, which is when pull requests are created, how long until someone has done a review on it. And as you can see, the numbers aren't great. This one took 7 days, 17 hours, 20. So mainly we have one outlier and then some question marks on why this is taking so long. What this is doing is this is taking problems away from a developer. So what would happen before this tool is that your senior developer or manager would have this inkling that something's wrong and be really annoyed and yell at people about it. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're just crazy. And then, no, you guys aren't doing reviews. And it would create this angst in the team, which would create problems, potentially personal problems, things like that. The more you can take something like that away from people and into a tool, better off everyone is. Think about how much automatic code formatting helped developers. Before, all the pull requests are all filled with, you need a space there, you need to move, that should be on a new line. And it was just annoying. And it was annoying for the person giving the feedback because it just annoyed them, so they had to give feedback. And it was annoying for the person receiving the feedback. They're like, I just did all this work that I'm really proud of, and you're commenting on, I need an extra space. That's annoying. So basically, everyone was annoyed and no one was happy. So then we adopted automatic code formatters, and now a whole class of problems in a pull request process go away. What you want to do is take that same approach to your process itself, waiting for a review, doing a review, but waiting on a merge, doing a deploy if that's going too long. Find ways to automate it. And actually, I want to give you one quick sneak peek. We're almost out of time. But one quick sneak peek on how we want to go beyond just this page that says this and go into actual actions. So not just telling you that you have some risks, but actually helping you set goals and thresholds for yourself over time. I'm not going to show you that feature yet. It's just started, but there is one thing that we did, which I'm pretty excited about, which is, let me switch us back over to our code editor because you can kind of see it here. This one. So we have some new rules that we're using, like this one. Pull request review overdue. If the pull request review lag time is greater than 10 hours and it is not a draft, then send a message to the reviewers in Slack. This is something where we're using this action to not only have a dashboard to see if something is at risk, but proactively message developers on Slack to tell them it's at risk. This has been kind of useful. I'm not going to say it changed the world because that would be lying, but I think it has been useful to help us highlight when things are getting stuck so that we can get better. Because what we want to do from a Sleuth customer standpoint, because again, we use our own tool, we want Sleuth to not just give us a pretty dashboard, but actually help us solve some of these problems. So being able to do automatic notifications and tracking of goals is something that we're really excited about. Closing thoughts. Oh, before I left, I did want to say one thing. I meant to do this in the other section, which is there is a feature that I am so excited about that I want to leak to you on this. It's going to be in the newsletter next time. We're probably going to talk about it on the next Sleuth TV Live, but I just cannot stop. And I've already kind of screwed it up a little bit. And that is, did that go? There, dark mode. It's dark mode as a developer. It kills us that our own tool doesn't have a dark mode. And so the developers and the designers got together on their own, almost practically spare time, because they're so passionate about this, to get out a sweet looking dark mode for Sleuth. So no longer will you have Gmail and Datadog and all these great dark mode UIs. Now, does Datadog support dark mode? I can't remember, but many of them do. Now Sleuth will join that number. So you no longer have to have your retinas burned off by the blinding white and shades of gray. Now you have dark shades of gray with a little bit of blue. I kind of like it. It's a little bit different. So that's not done. This is just on staging. We're not out in production yet, but by the time of next Sleuth TV Live, it will be, and we'll talk about it in more detail. But we're really excited. This is, again, one of those things. By having our team use our own tool, we're able and motivated to improve it in ways that maybe we wouldn't otherwise, because it just bugs us. And dark mode was definitely one of those. Does it give you a bunch of features to help you do more with less? No, it was just annoying. So soon, if you're a dark mode fan, if you're not, that's fine. But soon, for those dark mode fans out there, Sleuth will no longer be annoying. How's that? I'll be writing sales marketing copy with that. Make it not annoying. All right, so closing thoughts. Hold on. Dry throat. We have been talking a lot today about how we personally at Sleuth do more with less, how you can use DORA metrics to do more with less, how you can use unique Sleuth features to do more with less, all within the lens of how Sleuth uses Sleuth to do more with less. I will say on a personal note, that is probably one of my favorite things about this product, is I'm building it for myself. So this isn't building it for some use case I don't really understand, but they want me to build it, so fine. Our developers here at Sleuth, we build these things because we want to get value out of them. We want to build something that we want to use, that we're proud of, and that's super fun to do. So I guess there's not really a takeaway there other than the thing that I would take away, the meta comment, is you're talking about do more with less. And I've said this in another video. The key to doing more with less is to empower your developers to be able to make changes to the things that bug them. Because the people that are closer to the front lines are going to have the best information on what's actually happening, what's actually slowing things down. So the more you empower them, the more you will succeed, and the more your company will succeed, and your customers will be happy. So find ways to enable your developers to make changes that improve them. And hopefully Sleuth is a tool in that effort. Hopefully with Sleuth, you'll be able to take a process or a problem that you're having in your project and use Sleuth to automate some of that away, so that now you don't have that problem. And then you'll empower developers to create their own automations so they can take those things that are slowing them down and remove them, making everybody more efficient and everybody just having a more fun time. That's what we're doing this, right? We're developers because we want to make a change. I think of Daniel from Curl. His one request for the future isn't I want to make a bunch of money. It wasn't because I doubt he ever made any money on Curl. It wasn't even that I want to change the world. I want to keep doing something if somebody finds it useful. I love that. That was a great summary of the developer in my mind. I just want somebody to find it useful, and then I'm happy. So find ways to get rid of all the stuff that does not bring you happiness so you can focus on the things that do. Up next, we're probably going to be talking a lot about goals, is my thought. So the next Sleuth TV Live is going to be in a month. We're going to, of course, talk about the newsletter. We'll have something interesting, maybe a new Sleuth TV or news. I don't know. Let me know if you like the Sleuth News segment. We should do that more often. And then we will probably be talking about goals. We'll probably have a separate webinar. So I haven't decided if we'll spend the whole time talking about goals or we'll have a different theme that goals are involved so that we can focus on it in a webinar and bring Daniel maybe back, maybe bring a customer in here. We'll see. We'll see. It's a little bit fluid. Let us know what you'd like to see. Let us know what would be useful to you as you push through your continued efforts to improve your engineering productivity and efficiency, to be more successful at work, happier customers, all the good stuff. Anyways, thank you very much for joining me on Sleuth TV. Again, please feel free to leave a comment and a like if you found it interesting. Let us know what you would want to see more of or anything like that. The more feedback we get, the better. And I will see you next time on Sleuth TV Live. Take it easy.